So, because I mean, I was reading something you'd said about that ultimately what's gone wrong with this financial crisis is the inherent architecture of it. This isn't really down to the big businesses, you know, or the men in pinstripe suits, I think you said. You know, this is down to the inherent architecture of the states, which is sort of what you're alluding to there.
Well, I think it's both. I think it's both. I think that it's very difficult to often separate the pinstripe suited types in business from the suited types in politics. I think they often socialise together, I think they often mix together, and they often stitch up legislation together. So I think there's an unholy alliance there. And I mean, it was Adam Smith who said, I think in Book 10 of The Wealth of Nations, seldom do people of the same trade or profession get together, even for merriment and diversion, but soon the conversation turns to a conspiracy against the public interest. You only have to get a couple of builders together, or a couple of bankers together, or a couple of doctors together, and to stamp out too much competition, to stamp out too much consumer benefit. Oh no, this market should be regulated. We don't want too many Polish builders coming into our market. We need new health and safety laws, you know, we need new regulation. You have to have done a 2-year course to be operating in Britain. Or if you're a doctor, the classic, you know, oh, well, you know, to be a doctor you have to do 7 years of training. And then you have to be, you have to be recognised by the General Medical Council.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and sorry, where does the General Medical Council get its power from? Well, it has statutory authority from the Privy Council, which is the heart of the British state in many ways. Now, if you were a doctor, Jan, and you just graduated, having done your 7 years, and you end up out there, and you're on the water, and you think, do you know, I reckon I could educate much better doctors, high quality doctors, better teaching, but I think I could do it in 4.5 years. And you wanted to go off and raise the money to create your own medical school, better doctors, quicker, cheaper, faster. You wouldn't be allowed to then put it into operation because of the legislation. The General Medical Council wouldn't allow it, the Royal Colleges, all the people with state power wouldn't allow it. Who suffers? The people who suffer are the people
who need it.
Who need it, the people who want better, higher quality, cheaper medicine.
Yeah.
You know, someone waiting for a hip, waiting for a heart bypass, they're the people who suffer. So for me, organisations like the General Medical Council, these monopolists, they're immoral. They are immoral because they do down the consumer, and often the people who would gain most advantage, which are people on very, very humble means, the low income.
And finally, I mean, that relates beautifully to the central bank.
It does indeed.
That has this monopoly power, but I couldn't turn up and go, actually, here's my currency, I can do this faster, quicker, less inflationary. Absolutely. But I wouldn't be able to do it. Absolutely.
You know, I mean, you're right. I mean, you know, the Bank of England is to money and banking what the General Medical Council is to medicine. And the end result is, as I say, if you're rich, if you're wealthy, in this society, well, fine, you know, sort of go off to Bupa or go and get your healthcare in Switzerland if you want. Well, that's fine. You know, there gets a point where you're so wealthy you can almost indulge in anarcho-capitalism. Oh, they're not building an extra runway at Heathrow. Well, I've got a private jet, so I'll fly out of another airport.
Yeah. Or
I have a helicopter from my lawn in Surrey. You know, the anarcho-capitalist class is the people who are so wealthy they don't even have to touch the state. The people who are so wealthy that they just have private security guards, or they don't have to sully themselves with the police turning up any day now. You know, they're fine. The people who suffer from this statism are people, well, they're sort of the bulk of the ordinary, you know, relatively poor, relatively humble, you know, people in our society, people who can't afford the private healthcare, the helicopter, or whatever. They're the people who suffer. The other irony I'm going to say is, I mean, just going a step further, the other people who suffer are often the people who join the medical profession or support the General Medical Council because they're sort of slightly deluded, and they really do believe it is safeguarding standards and you know and morality and the best settlement. You know, so many doctors really do believe that it is right.
Well, I feel that very much about graduates that are now joining the banking system today. The
Yeah.
people I've just graduated with this summer,
Okay.
they've just joined because they feel they can start making a change. You know, I feel that very much, and it's very similar to sort of doctors that have just started now, and
Yeah.
that's not how it works.
That's not how it works, because actually what they will discover is they get locked into a system which has a power structure and a political infrastructure, statutory and legislative architecture underpins it, that doesn't allow innovation, it doesn't allow creativity. I mean, I sort of sum it up. Years ago, a student said to me, I don't understand people like you, Tim. You know, you believe in private telephones. This is mad, Tim. And it was in the days where you used to have a telephone on a desk, and they all made of Bakelite, and they came in 4 colours. And you know, they were sort of run by the GPO. It was before even the days of British Telecom. And this person said to me, I don't understand it, you know, Tim, you want a competing private telephone system. These telephones work, they're perfectly good. Okay, it takes you 2 or 3 months to get one. But if you had different private companies, what would you have? Would you have 2 or 3 cables coming out of the back of this phone to different companies? And my answer was, I don't know what will happen to telephones when they're privatised. I don't know how they'll be improved. I don't know in which ways they'll be improved. But I know they will be much better. Today, you don't have to wait 3 months for a phone. You don't have to put it on a desk. You can have, you know, you can have a handheld phone in home. You can be on Skype. You can have an iPhone. The world is different.
Mm-hmm.
And no one today would say, oh yes, we want to go back to a Bakelite phone. Yet, when it comes to those most important areas for our society and for our communities, things like money, banking, healthcare, welfare, the system still operates like a Bakelite telephone. And what I'm in favour of is exploding all that, opening it up, particularly in the name of the poorest and the disadvantaged. And I want a world where in healthcare and banking and money, we have the equivalent of the iPhone and Skype and all these wonderful things.
That is brilliant. Thank you very much, and thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure. My pleasure.